Hey guys, so following on from our economic lifestyles model, today we'll be talking about practical application. I have lived in all three lifestyles. In South Africa, I ran a significance lifestyle where I commanded my own time. We had resources to do stuff. In America, the first year of our marriage, I had to wait 6 months for my work permit. So I had 6 months where we were in derelict poverty, credit card debt. Kelly was away working every day, and I had 12 hours to kill, but I wasn't allowed to work. And then the last year and a half, 2 years, we were in the slavery economy. At a weekly wage job, and we owned a piece of land that we had a mortgage on. We had student loans that we were paying off, and we had the credit card debt that we had from the previous year. So I've lived in all three lifestyles. I've also lived in South Africa, which is predominantly a survival economy, and in America, which is a significance economy. And so when we talk about practical application, let's start with the survival economy. So the problems of survival are a lack of health and a lack of safety. When it comes to health, the two keys of health are sanitation and nutrition. And when it comes to safety, the two keys are shelter and I've got flies mating on my ears. This is ridiculous. When it comes to safety, the two key factors are shelter and law and order. So one of the coolest quotes about poverty is that the poor don't need money, they need work. And so the biggest thing about poverty is that if you look at the slavery economy, people can work 40, 50, 60, even there's some weirdos who can work 80 hours a week, just at their slave jobs, gunning it, going for their wage, 80 hours a week. But when it comes to poverty, if you look at a lot of poor communities, they've got all the time in the world, but they don't know what to work at. That's no fault of their own. You'll see that each economic lifestyle has their own problems that they don't know how to solve, because we aren't, if we're raised by people who are poor, they haven't obviously cracked the code. If we're raised by people who are wage slaves, they haven't cracked the code. So we're discipled, we're taught, each one of us, by people outside of that economic lifestyle, how to graduate from those problems. And so when you look at the problems of survival, sanitation and health, those are things that you can work at. If you've got, if you go to any township or slum where 100,000 people have congregated in a square kilometer, why are they there? Because it's survival. It's like, man, I need something to eat. I need to go to the city to find a wage job. And they're not wrong for that. It's biblical. It's like every time there was a famine, people would go and sell themselves into slavery in Egypt. They would go down to Egypt. There's food there. There's work there. Go work there. And Joseph, after the 7 great years, the famine years, people started selling themselves into slavery in order to eat. So it's a model of human nature. To the way we graduate out of survival is to sell ourselves into slavery. And so you get these townships and slums where people have congregated to come and sell themselves into slavery, but there's no slavery work. And so now they're dealing with huge sanitation problems, with nutrition problems, with law and order problems, with shelter problems. And so one of the biggest things right now we're seeing in America is the homestead movement and the tiny house movement are being vindicated. Because if you had stayed in the rural area, you've got space to grow your own food, so that's what you can work at, growing your own food. And you've got space to deal with your waste management, right? So a lot of the tiny house guys do composting toilets. They do rainwater catchment. They do zero waste consumerism. That's all things that can happen when you've got a piece of land. The other side of this is shelter and law and order, right? So in America, everyone's allowed to own a gun. I highly recommend that. That's one way of protecting yourself. In South Africa, everybody has a wall, a 3-meter high wall with broken glass on the top and 10 dogs inside. Those are great, absolutely great tactics to survive in a violent place. But the bigger thing here is law and order. And what you see in a lot of communities is vigilante justice. And the church should be leading this, right? So a lot of churches are just happy to collect your tithe and slap people on the back and drink coffee. If you really see the operation of a church as a community of civic government, as the leader of the church, as a judge, you know, then it becomes intense, because now you're the judge of a community when it comes to enforcing law and order. You know, on a Sunday you preach morality, and then Monday to Saturday you enforce it. You know, that's one of the biggest things I believe is going to be happening in increasingly multicultural communities where everyone has a different morality, is there's going to start becoming a huge vigilante aspect to law and order. And hopefully the church will lead in that aspect. So as far as survival is concerned, an interesting thing is happening where in America people are choosing to drop down from the slavery economy into the survival economy, where people are saying, the homesteaders and the tiny house guys, where they're going, hey, I'd rather be money poor but time rich, right? So my food, you know, all my base survival stuff is met, and now I've got time. You know, a lot of people who love their family are going this route. A lot of people who love just to pursue naturalism or environmentalism are going this way. A lot of people who have very simple habits and hobbies are going this route. And so let's go now to the slavery economy. So the biggest thing about the slavery economy, I say slavery not as like, oh, all jobs are bad, all bosses are evil. It's like, no. Slavery, the Bible says, the borrower is servant, the borrower is slave to the lender. So to understand the slavery economy, one has to understand banking. Bankers make money by usury, all right? They don't make money until people take their money and have to pay it back at interest. So if nobody is buying consumer goods, if nobody's taking out loans, then the banks aren't making money. So the banks push huge time, they push consumerism, they push advertising, they push the creation through the media, through Hollywood, of these extravagant lifestyles that you can have, all right? You know, a new car every 2 years, new clothes, a huge house that you don't really need, to live in the most fanciest places, to go out to eat every night. And the way you do that is, you see, you've got this credit card that, let's say you make $500 a week, right? So you're making $500 a week. Well, now $500 a week on a credit card payoff, well, that gives you access to $50,000 worth of loan money. Okay, so now you go and you buy a new car, and you buy a new house, and you go and you eat at restaurants, and now all of a sudden, boom, you've capped out your 50 grand, and now you're like, oh man, like I've got to work to pay off the credit card, and now you're a slave to debt, because if you stop paying, they come and take it all away, and at worst case scenario, put you in prison. But so now you go do your job, and you now become super dependent on that wage. You can't miss a week, right? So if you're like, man, I really like to just this week just sit around and read a book and be with my family and watch my garden grow. It's like, sorry man, you got to go 8 to 5 every day, go get that wage, otherwise they're coming to repossess all the stuff that you've overbought. Right, so that's what I mean by slavery, right? You don't control your own time. And so that's one of the biggest aspects of the slavery life, is that you sell your time, right? You sell your time. And again, we don't know any better because we've been brought up this way, right? So one of the ways, if you really start listening to Dave Ramsey, he really gets this debt thing, how debt is the number one enslavement tool in the world, right? Because it tickles all of our lusts. It gets all the stuff you want now, but for the rest of your life, you're now a slave. And at this moment, a lot of guys will be like, hey, but Scott, debt's good, bro. Have you not read Robert Kiyosaki? Have you not read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Yeah, I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. He's in the next level, right? He's in the significance level. And so us slave boys who've been brought up in slavery, you don't understand that debt is only for buying assets. It's only for buying assets. The moment you buy liabilities with it, you're being a slave. Slaves buy consumer goods. Slaves buy liabilities. Slaves buy things that are nice now and then have zero value later. Right? And so if you understand Dave Ramsey, he gets you out of debt slavery. His whole thing is like, get out of debt, build up 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses. And now you're in a place where like the wage is not, you're not so afraid of losing the wage. You're not addicted to the wage anymore, because you're like, whoa, like, okay, I can live if this thing ends. And so that then he gets you to the point of finishing your debt slavery, to now start trying to ask, how do I get to significance rather than wage slavery? And so let's go to that third level, right? Significance economy is all about selling your passions, your talents, not your time. So if you had to ask yourself right now, what are my top 3 talents? What would people say I'm phenomenal at? What am I brilliant at? And a lot of people are like, oh no, I'm good at that. Like, stop that crap. Like, you are good at stuff and you know it, right? So what are the 3 things that you are like really good at, that you love doing, that you would pay to do? That's your talent stack, your passion stack, right? And you've got to try and ask the question, how can I serve people with products and services around those talents? So for me, I love rugby. I love it. Like, for the last 4 years, I've paid to coach it, right? I don't get paid to do it. In fact, it's cost me money to go and coach rugby, but it's worth it because I love it, right? And so for me, I've got to ask the question, all right, how can I sell products and service around that passion and talent stack rather than sell my time? You know, let's take doctors, for instance, right? A lot of doctors go into medicine because they want to help people. They love, like, just figuring out, like, man, I can heal people, right? If they finish med school, $1 million in debt, $100,000 in debt, all right? They go buy a BMW on credit card. They go get the biggest house in the fanciest neighborhood. Well, now they're forced to go and work their debt slavery off, and now they're a slave. You know, they're working at a big hospital or whatever, and they become a slave of their debt. All right. The better way, if you're a doctor, and apply this to any trade. All right. If you're a plumber, if you're a real estate agent, if you're sales is a great job, because in sales, you're not selling your time, you're selling a result. All right. But just make sure it's something you love. If you love property, be a real estate agent. If you love cars, then you can sell cars. Like, if you love, this is why network marketing is actually a significance tool, right? If you love essential oils or makeup or nutrition, like, there's a way for you to be in that industry and not sell your time, but you're actually selling a product or a service. So to get back to the doctor, the way to do it is to say, how can I sell a service and a product, right? And so a lot of doctors are like, all right, I'm going to go be a small town doctor, like, no debt. I'm going to love on the small town families, and like, that's what I'd love to do. Okay, then the way to do that is to not buy the new car. Try not buy the biggest house you can get, you know, like be clever about being content. Contentment is one of the biggest ways to exit slavery. It's your lusts which enslave you. So when it comes to the significance economy, the biggest thing is time. Significance people control their time, whereas slaves, their time is controlled by others through their own lusts, through their own indebtedness. And so the problems of the significance economy are a lack of mission and a lack of legacy, right? So with mission, a lot of people will be like, okay, I've made all the money, I'm free. Like, what am I supposed to do with my life now? Like, that's a question that they're asking, right? And I think a lot of that is through, you're now freed from serving people. If you have money and time, you don't have. Slaves have to serve people, whereas significance people don't have to serve people. And so sometimes you're actually removed. You're like, man, I've slaved for 10 years. Like, I'm done serving people. Like, I'm just gonna go lock myself away, and I don't have to see people anymore. This is awesome. But meaning and mission comes from serving people. So you have to now ask the question, who are the people I want to serve? Who are the people I'm going to enjoy serving? You're going to find a lot of mission and significance there. The other thing is legacy, right? We find that family is one of the biggest givers of meaning to our life.